Welcome to this special edition of ONME Sunday Mornings. My name is Julia Dudley Najib, and the reason why we don't want to spend too much talking is because we have a special presentation for you. We had Brandon Risher, who was here from Charlotte, North Carolina, who has several degrees in psychology. His MA is LPA and his HSP-PA. And the reason why the name, if you're not relevant with the name, I'm sure you're relevant with the incident that took place in Charleston, South Carolina, where the 9 church members were brutally murdered, including his grandmother and cousin. And he spoke at Fresno City College this past week to talk to students and the community about implicit and explicit behaviors and interactions. And so we'll be able to see that one-on-one interview. But first, we're going to show you some of the excerpts from the actual 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. presentation that really featured those behaviors, implicit and explicit behaviors. So let's take a look at the review of this presentation.
And what do I do with these feelings? So, as the activity today, I want everyone at their tables to answer these questions. And this, because if you want to bring this thing to life, you got to actually bring it to life. You have to actually answer these questions. You know, when you have discussions about prejudice and race, everybody goes up to the point where they feel comfortable and then drop off and say, well, we can't go there. I don't want you to know about my biases, though I will show them to you in very implicit ways, which we have discussed earlier. So, as a task, I want everyone at their tables, and the staff members, you have to do this too, to talk about your biases, your prejudices, how they affect you, how they affect the people around you. Well, a prejudice can be something as explicit as a preference that I only want to date people of my own race, right? Sounds like a preference. Sounds like a great preference, by the way, if that's what you're into. But it is based on race, right? So I am biased to people of my own race, and that doesn't necessarily inherently have to be a bad thing. But it does affect people, right? It affects you. So, but how does it affect you? That's what I want to challenge you on. What I said this morning is, I want to get you to how to think about things differently, not what to think. That's not my job. All of you are adults or aspiring adults. You'll be there at some point. So you're going to get a lot of what to do in your life.
Back to what he was talking about the baseball thing. I'm a baseball player and I played for Fresno High, and that's actually exactly what happened at first. Like, we don't have a lot of like black people on our team, and so when somebody comes out, we're not against them, but we ask them like, hey, so you know, we kind of start assuming things and thinking they're going to be good or they're going to be bad, depending if they know how to play the game. And almost every team we played, they do the same thing because we had a black person on our team. They would say the same thing about ours.
Sometimes we're very well intentioned, right? I don't think people will mean any harm. Just, you know, I would like to think that people think I'm fast. It'd be nice, right? Not, but it'd be nice. But I'm more than that. And I think at its core, when you label people, when you give labels to people, you're also taking things away from them. Because you're not allowing yourself the freedom to see and to say, they're more than that. But we also do that to ourselves with labels. So the prejudices that people have against us can really affect the way you behave. Let's say, for example, people keep telling you, oh, maybe you should be a basketball player. Maybe I should. I don't want to be, but maybe I should. I should get on the court, right? Because I can confirm that for them. Right? It takes a very strong person to fly in the face of negative stereotypes. But hopefully today, you can at least have an awareness to say, okay, when these things come to me, what do I do with this? How do I go? How do I approach this? So this is what the last part will be. I had the pleasure, under the difficult circumstances of my grandmother's death, to see what community actually looks like. And it wasn't just that people who looked like me and were black who were giving me condolences and cards and greetings and saying, what can I do to help? There were people of all colors. Because in that moment, we were all grieving. And that's the commonality that we had at that time. We were all grieving people. That everyone has either goes to church or has gone to one. So they understood that that humanity that they felt was something that could bring us together. You have to use that as a tool to say, all right, now how do we use this baseline to go forward with this understanding? Right? We have to reduce our cognitive load to stress. Like I said earlier, it's a little harder to call upon these logical things, you know, when you're really stressed out. It's easy in a sanitized environment like this, or in your classroom, or at home. But, you know, when you're out in the community and that stress hits, you have to say to yourself, all right, what can I do to reduce it? So, let's use a police officer for example. Everyone is saying in the news about how police officers appear to be killing young black men at a disproportionate rate. And they will say, well, fight or flight, right? I'm scared. But aren't they trained not to be? Right? Aren't they getting paid not to be stressed like that? They'll use that as an excuse and they'll cherry pick. And I'm using that as an example because we'll all do it. We'll all cherry pick when we want to use our biases to our advantage, to justify our behavior. And a lot of that is because they're unaware of it. And again, this is just bringing it to the awareness. And again, that's effort. So from an organizational standpoint, right, this organization being in school, you have to see what infrastructures are in place.
After the break, we're actually going to be talking with Mr. Risher about not only how he was able to deal with the upset in his family and the extreme tragedy and grief that struck in a moment's notice. So you're watching ONME Sunday Mornings. Please stay tuned for more.
When you have credit card debt, the debt suckers' high rate and high pay are everywhere.
Ooh, they're making another minimum payment. Great. Most of the money goes to us. We'll suck the life out of them.
Because your credit card rates are so high, you can't get rid of the debt suckers alone.
Their minimum payments are in vain. No, that's juicy.
But one call to Consolidated Credit can get the debt suckers off your neck.
Thank you for calling Consolidated Credit.
Oh no, they lower his rates and consolidate his bills into one low payment. He'll pay off his debt in no time. Consolidated Credit drives us batty.
Call Consolidated Credit now. Call now and get your life back.
Oh, because debt sucks.
Call now.
Call Consolidated Credit at 1-800-810-0786. That's 1-800-810-0786. Call now.
Welcome back to a special presentation of ONME Sunday Mornings. We have been really talking about implicit and explicit behaviors in interactions and racism. The keynote speaker that was at the event that took place here at Fresno City College this past week was H. Brandon Risher, who again was the unfortunate victim of where his family members in that brutal massacre of the 9 church members included his grandmother and cousin. This was a man of, I would say, a great role model, not only for our community, but for the nation. So we did a one-on-one interview to talk about some of those issues, such as Black Lives Matter and racism in general, and what are the steps to being able to educate people, and what do we do now? So let's take a look. This is Julia Delinaji with ONME Sunday Mornings. I am here with the keynote speaker of today's presentation, Brandon Risher, who has been through his own levels of tragedies, and yet he is here speaking about the implicit and explicit forms of racism as a psychologist. Brandon, we first like to welcome you and thank you very much for coming to speak to students, coming to speak to our Valley.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
What were some of the issues that the keynotes that you wanted students and the community to really nail home? You wanted them to be able to take something with them so they can share that with the community.
Well, one thing I wanted is just an awareness and a recognition that implicit bias is there, right? That racism is here, it's present, it's omnipresent, but how is it? How does it become such? You know, what are the variables that are there that progress racism, whether they're both explicit or implicit? But also just at its crux, just an awareness and say, all right, now how do I think about this differently? How are my own biases playing a role in my behavior, whether it's educational, whether it's familial, whether it's societal? That awareness can be the thing that is the progress for change, right? So I have to be aware of something before I can change it. So what I really wanted to do is to bring to light some of the things that are unconscious and implicit in us, and to bring those to light so that we can then go forward as a community and say, now what do we best do? Whether it's through legislation, whether it's through enactment with our own families, or just as an individual, what do we do to ensure that we're creating a better place going forward?
I noticed that it was very important that you talked about public policy and for students in the community really getting involved on a local level. Oftentimes we'll see people go take it out the emotional way and take it out a different way, and yet they feel like that's not enough. What would be your answer to that?
Well, you have to understand how reality is dictated, and reality is dictated through the laws and the policies that are enacted. So from what I'm talking about as far as going from the policy standpoint, those people who create the policies and the laws are the ones that get to dictate how you will behave in Fresno or wherever you may live. So you need to understand how the power structure operates before you can evoke any change. You know, as I said in the speech, the desire for something to change is not necessary for it to do so. So you have to understand where exactly is the power structure and get in there, and whether it's voting, whether it's going to meetings and voicing your opinions, but they have to know, because without it, they're going to default to the status quo. And if I'm in power, why would I ever want to give that up, particularly if you don't bring it up to me? So you have to be more strategic. You know, you have to channel your rage and your anger. You know, protesting is good, but you need to have some power. We need to enact people in Congress, in the local governments, who can actually evoke some real change from a policy standpoint. The implicitness will still be there. Those things take a little longer to get out, but from a policy standpoint, you still have to understand that these things are real, and without changing, without them evolving, that nothing would ever really change.
In fact, a perfect example of that would be in Ferguson, when we look at the change that could not happen until after people understood they have to be involved in public policy.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and even in North Carolina where I live, where voting ID laws that disproportionately affect, and someone would say, well, no, this is about cutting budgets or something like that. But those budgets have real effects. And if people don't take time to analyze the actual effects of these policies and how they may disproportionately affect a certain group of people, then no one will ever really try to do anything. In Alabama, which is a few states down, they're closing all of the DMVs except 4. Right? So if I don't have an ID and you require me to vote, then I can't help change my reality. I can't participate in the American experience. And that's a fundamental thing for all individuals, is the right to vote. And if we're not able to exercise that, how can we ever really realistically expect any change to occur?
And speaking of the changes that are occurring, we look at the Black Lives Matter movement. There are a lot of changes and there are a lot of emotions on both sides on that matter. From the psychological view, what is happening? How do we explain this to the bigger community, the greater community, about this experience?
Well, I think the Black Lives Matter movement in particular is really about the unique plight that African Americans face. Some people will say, well, all lives matter, and if without context, that makes a lot of sense. But in doing that, you disown the unique plight, right? That you ignore the data. You're telling me to believe something, though the knowledge that I have flies right in the face of that. So the Black Lives Matter movement is to say, no, I need you to look at the data, the incarceration rates, the dropout rates, the high teenage pregnancy rates. These things are disproportionately affecting people. So if you don't recognize our unique plight, then how would you ever change it? If you say that all lives matter, and yet the data doesn't suggest that, you know, the outcomes are equal, then you're saying by default that we're defective, right?
So we're talking about that equity issue.
Correct. So if one race is inherently defective, then you can say, hey, well, it's beyond my control. But to say no, that there are things from an institutional standpoint that can perpetuate some of the statistics, right? If the arrest rates are high, who's arresting people, right? If dropout rates are high, what's the family dynamic look like? So bringing these to light are a way for us to really try to evoke some strategic change. It's all about strategy, right? You have to understand the power structure, and then in a strategic manner, in a surgical manner, do something to evoke change.
You know, you and your family have been through your own tragedy when you're looking at what happened in South Carolina and the churches and what happened thereafter, and directly affecting you from your grandmother to your cousin. You could easily take that anger out and be marching on the streets. What made you say, I have to do this differently?
Well, because none of it doesn't work. You know, there have been, in whether it's the bombing of the churches in Alabama in the 60s going forward, me being angry simply isn't enough. The anger has to be some impetus for change. And if I can be an agent for change in a positive way to say, you know what, how do I channel this anger? We all have it to a degree, but how do we channel it in a way that can be productive, that can move the conversation forward, and to really bring out and evoke the anxieties that we all feel that we try really, really hard to suppress so that we can live our lives stress-free, to say, all right, if I can bring these things to light, if I can use my own tragedy as a way to evoke some change, then it is my duty, as a black man, as a psychologist, to use the gifts and the skills that I have, to use the uniqueness of my experience as a way to evoke some real change.
And my final question really delves around when we look at racism. Many people think that since 1964 things have not changed. Others would beg to differ, looking at some of the emotions that are coming out, whether it be through the marching, whether it be through the Black Lives Matter, whether it be through the media. What would be your take on that?
Well, I think that progress is never linear, right? It's not a full progression of progress. That when a group of people have a certain level of progress, then the establishment will fight that, because for someone to win, someone has to lose something. So it's kind of more of a stepwise way of progression. So yes, we've made great strides in some. We have more congressmen and women than ever before. We have more government officials. The police chief in Charlotte, where I'm from, is black, right? The mayors have been black for quite some time. But we still have a long way to go, right? Having a black president isn't enough. He's representative, but he is.
But he's supposed to solve all the problems. That's what I'm talking
Right. The infrastructure of government says that he cannot.
Right.
So, and people have to understand that, and that's why it's not about voting for the president. It's about voting for your senators. It's about voting for your congresspeople. It's about voting for your local officials, because those are the ones who you're going to feel that impact way more than a figurehead as a president. Now, he has done a lot of good, and more often than not, more than anything, he's been a role model, right? That in my lifetime, that I can actually say that I saw and I met a president who looked like me. But there's a long way that we have to go. We'll never get there. There's nothing to get there, but it's all about the progress. It's about the journey. It's about the effort and the blood, sweat, and tears that we have to do to make sure that we're all more inclusive, while still accepting my uniqueness, that we can be more of a community with the differences, as opposed to everybody being gender neutral and racially neutral.
Is there an assessment where we can see that improvement, that we can maybe self-check ourselves, self-check our communities?
There's a lot of information that's out there. One of the places that I go as a reference is the Pew study, PEW studies, that looks a lot about statistics, whether it comes with race or gender or sexual orientation. But I would also challenge people to look at it with a skeptic's eye, that to say that all data tells a story. And what story is this data telling me? And what would be the alternative explanations to that? I think as critical thinkers, that's what we have to do. We have to critically think. We just can't accept data as the status quo. We have to challenge it and say, well, how did this come to be, right? All data was collected and analyzed for a reason. How do we get there? And what do we do with this, so that when I do ask somebody for some change, I can say, all right, this is what you say, but here are some other explanations. Now, how do we address these as well?
We would like to thank you. First of all, I'd like to shake your hand, because thank you for coming to our community. And we are still sorry for your loss. And so we apologize on behalf of our entire community and AMP TV. But we also love to see the healing and appreciate seeing you as our role model. So we'd like to thank Mr. Risher for being able to share with us what it's going to take to not only evaluate implicit and explicit racism, but how we too can begin to change ourselves, change our communities. This is Julia Delinaji with ONME Sunday Mornings. We'll be back after a short break. And we just got a chance to look at that very honest interview where Mr. Risher really talks about what it takes for change in a community, which deals with public policy, getting involved in local politics. And so we were so glad to be able to have him here in Fresno, California. And I hope that as he makes his way back to North Carolina, that he will keep us in mind, because we are a community not to be forgotten. Tragedy can really strike anywhere, and that's something that we know we can take from this and remember. And not only that, but his own mother, who was just on that Capitol Hill talking about gun control issues and what needs to be done to really have a change when it comes to gun control laws. And very humble man, although he met the First Lady Michelle Obama and the President Barack Obama. That's not where he shines. We'd say that he shines most by telling us how it is and what we should do to overcome racism. It is a first step, and it's going to be a long haul, but if we all work together, it can be done. After the break, we'll be looking at that last excerpt of the Fresno CDFI and being able to listen to that business owner who actually got funding. So here's your chance to also look into funding. Stay tuned for more. You're watching ONME Sunday Mornings.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call right now, 800-658-0716, 800-658-0716, 800-658-0716. That's 800-658-0716.
Welcome back to ONME Sunday Mornings. And we want to encourage you to, if you are a business owner, to be encouraged through Fresno CDFI that can help you find ways to funding. In this last excerpt, they talk about the final ways to be able to look into funding or at least get loan ready. And then we also get to hear from the business owner that was actually funded from the Fresno CDFI. So let's take a look at that.
I mean, it's word of mouth is how we spread. And so we want people out there to know that our doors are open, and if you just want an hour of our time to sit down, pitch your idea, talk about what it takes, we have loan officers that can sit down with you, professionals that have guided others towards capital. But maybe it's not even just capital that you need. Maybe it's just some ideas or take a look at a projection.
Like we was talking earlier, this is one of our borrowers that is a success story for us. We were able to provide them with some capital, to expand their business. Now let her introduce herself.
My name is Brianna with Elite Wireless.
Elite Wireless.
We handle everything wireless that you can possibly imagine. So what we do is we are a consultant. I guess that's probably the best way, and we're solutions engineers. So we manage large corporate accounts, government accounts, and we've been doing that for about, I've had experience for about 17 years, and then for the last 5 years, I've had my own company. And we decided that we wanted to create our own brand. And I say we, my sister and I are business owners, business partners. So we wanted to create our own brand. We wanted to grow outside of what we were doing at that particular point. We wanted to have more of a retail presence. We wanted to repair and create convenience, those types of things. So we wanted to be the target, in a sense, of cellular, of wireless, of internet. And that's when we started growing our brand and laying out a beautiful website. And to do these things, when you're starting from a small spectrum and then you're growing, we grew about 6 departments within a year's time.
Oh, wow.
So it takes a lot of capital.
Yes, it does. Were they able, tell us how they were able to assist you in achieving your...
So as you start a business, or not start a business, but let's say expand a business as quickly as we decided to, at that point, it takes a lot of capital. So I had a lot of investors and things were going great, but then you still have to, consider, okay, we're going to have a new location. We're going to need to bring on way more employees because we're having that, we're expanding our presence, and we need to bring on more marketing, lots of more marketing, because you're branding your product. So when that happened, time continues and and
Bills keep
resource
running, yeah.
bills keep running. They don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And you find that, you know, each month it becomes a struggle when you're growing rapidly like we are. So growing rapidly doesn't mean that, again, the customers know about every product that we provide or every service. So we're getting to that point, but we're not quite there yet. But they came in and they got us at a very pivotal point. We had some big decisions to make. Do we continue to expand and build our brand, or do we, you know, say, you know what, it was a great ride, but we'll go back to where we were most successful. And we still see a big need for what we're doing. We feel like it's really going to be something that takes off in the next year or so.
I was going to ask you about that. What time frame? How long did it take from the time you were introduced to them and knew that you needed their assistance? Was it that they were able to deliver to you?
I would say it was about 45 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty quick. We had to provide a lot of documentation because even though I've been in business for 5 years, what the direction that we're heading is almost as if you're starting a new business.
New territory.
And so they have to consider all that information, and you have to be able to provide them the information they need to say, okay, this is an educated decision, let's move forward.
Did you have to do a lot of educating to them because it was so new? Because sometimes when you go to a lender and they're not familiar with what you're doing, sometimes you have to educate them as to let them see the big picture.
And that's why I think we're on the cutting edge, and that's why.
Okay.
But yes, they had a lot of questions, and they said, why, when you have all these other services out there, all these websites, why would you need a company like Elite Wireless? And so we then, at that point, they came by and they did a survey. They asked a lot of questions. How are you using the money? What are all these departments? What are they doing? What we ended up doing was we gave them our PowerPoint outline that laid out all of the areas we were expanding on our website. And I think that made it a little bit easier for them to take all of that in, because even our website developers were like, wow, you're really going to do this all at once? And we said, yeah, it's gonna work out. You guys will see. You'll interview me next, and I'll be a sponsor here.
And that was the last excerpt of our series that we had from Fresno CDFI, talking about ways that you as a business owner can get funding. We also hope that you enjoyed the special edition of ONME Sunday Mornings, where we were so glad to be able to feature special guest speaker who came to talk about how we can deal with racism, Brandon Risher. And this program will be online if you missed it on TV today. And you can always go to myonme.com to find all of our past shows. And definitely look at Kevin Shakir's show, My Clip Radio TV, and Valley Black Talk Radio that airs daily on myonme.com. Thank you for watching this edition of ONME Sunday Mornings. Have a great week.